If you're oversized, you can slide right into that fight or flight system, and our bodies will go on full alert, and it heightens your emotional responses, it heightens your energy, your heart rate, you get sweaty palms, and that generally will mean that your leverage is too high. And the numbers that are being thrown around are stressing you out, and you're not sure what to do with this. You're really like almost praying that it goes in your direction. I would argue in that situation, you're probably too big on size. And so consider cutting that or how you need to modify it. If it's just 1 or 2 mini contracts and you're really quite stressed out, like consider 5 or 10 micros as your size instead. And then you can scale still because you're in micros. The potential loss will not be quite as stressful.
Just a quick pause before we get into this. Trading can be intense, and staying mindful during your session matters so much. That's why I created and am sharing a free 3-part audio experience that's helped me deeply. 1 for starting your day with calm intention, 1 to stay centered while you trade, and 1 to wind down with grace when it's time to stop. These tracks are yours. Just click the link in the description.
Hey, welcome back. Here at the Market Mamas podcast, I cover a wide range of topics from the intricacies of day trading to mindset mastery and psychological growth, with the goal of the conversations being next level growth for all of us. My name is Becky, and I'm a US-based futures day trader from the Pacific Northwest. My trading experience includes trading stocks, options, crypto, and futures, with both trading a personal account as well as with prop funding companies. Over time, I found that I most enjoy the fast-paced world of intraday futures trading, so that is my primary day trading focus now. Thank you for joining me on the Market Mamas podcast today.
Hey everybody, I'm Becky, host of Market Mamas, and it's early in 2026. And when I was thinking about topics that I wanted to cover and haven't really touched on in quite some time, part of what I'm working through in my trading career, just myself and my computer in the morning and the early hours when I'm alone with my trading system, is my consistency. So I have definitely experienced boom and bust cycle in trading, especially early on, and like really high highs and really low lows that was really hard to persevere through. And thank goodness I have settled down a little bit, and I am really trying to embrace boring trading, stable, consistent, settled with my hypothesis. Like I read the market, I create my trade plan, and then I do my best to trade in consistency with that trade plan, and then get 1 or 2 clean, easy trades that speak to exactly what I was looking for, and it presented, and I did as I intended to, with the size that I intended to. That sort of like boring trading has really got me my most successful, consistent financial outcomes. And so as I am focusing on who I want to really make sure I'm bringing into this next phase, next year, that is something that I have to have very high on my priority list, is being super consistent. And so today I want to talk a little bit about just psychology behind that, because I've been thinking about it. I've been putting it in my journaling and my notes and my goals for coming into this coming year. And I thought maybe some other people want to talk about it too. Because consistency really isn't about motivation or willpower. It's more about like your clearly defined process, your identity as a trader, who you're sure you want to be, and how you want to execute based on what you've learned, your system, your back-tested, established rules and setups, and then your risk, right? The risk containment that you use in order to have safeguards on your trading and make sure that no day has to be a horribly traumatic day, right? And so I think sometimes what happens at the start of a new year, myself is, not opposed to this in general, like we come into it with a lot of energy of, I'm going to have a great year. Whatever happened bad in 2025, that happened, that's done. We're moving forward. It's all sunshine and roses and moving up. But I think that motivation and that confidence and that early, like really eye on the prize focus is good. However, the concern is when the reality seeps in, if you're not actually making sure that you have made changes and are actively pursuing the adjustments you need to make based on your data from last year that will get you to the most stable outcomes. And so it's more like we need to think about not only being motivated right now, but what we can do to be consistent so we can avoid some emotional whiplash that is really unpleasant and can derail us for any number of days sometimes, depending on how deeply it impacts us. And so I want to, for myself, like make a part of my goals and my whole approach to think about what I want to do my best on in this coming year. And it's definitely that consistency. And I think we've been there, right? Especially if you start off this year really, really dialed into your system and your discipline. And so then you get the outcomes that leads to. Oftentimes that'll be beautiful green days. And when you get a string of those beautiful green days, I don't know about you, but sometimes that can lead to an overconfidence and a sense of kind of invincibility. Like I have done it. Like I am a killer trader. Last year taught me a lot. And now I know how to trade, and I am just nailing it at the start of this year. I'm really coming into it with strong. This is my year. Now I've got it. So be careful with that, right? This episode's going to come out the second half of January. I'm recording it a little sooner than that, but be careful with that phase, because there is a vulnerability in that sort of overconfidence, because you can really get, really sure about your trading system and get lax on some of your rules. And in that situation, there is a definite risk of having a really bad day. There's a risk of feeling invincible, of feeling like you're on a roll, you're an excellent trader, like anything that you did in the past that was hard and derailed you, that's not who you are anymore. Obviously, your results speak to that. But then on a day where maybe you start with a losing trade and then you get frustrated and you immediately enter again, and then you have a back-to-back losing trade, in that situation, like, I don't know a trader alive that's not going to have some kind of an emotional reaction, because we're humans. There is going to be a potential tilt situation going on there. And then that's where it could be an easy slide into a revenge trading, rule breaking, full on tilt, like horrible day. And so that's why I kind of want to talk about this now, is because some of us might be on a beautiful winning streak starting off our year and be in this place where there's a little bit of risk with making sure we're being super careful. And I think that we all know this, right? Like what I just said to enter this topic, it's not rocket science. We've been there, right? I've been there. I've had periods where I've had really, really dialed in discipline and reading the market super clearly, and nice, beautiful string of positive days. And then, the rug gets pulled out from under me, out of my own execution choices, right? Out of my own behaviors. And so then we know that I didn't need to bring the energy. I didn't need to succumb to those negative habits. But what could I have done differently? So I think that's where I want to talk about today, is what can we do differently? How can we prepare that this might happen, that this has happened in our past, potentially for a lot of us? And what do I want to do to change that this year? And I think that's where our goals can become powerful, because we're not only saying I'm just going to do great and eyes forward, eyes on the prize, eyes on the dreamy goals that you want to achieve. Instead, it's bringing all of your lessons forward, saying I took these lessons last year and now I want to grow, really internalize those lessons and do differently. So, what's the situation? Why don't we always do that, right? Why does it have to be they happen and now I'm not going to do it? Well, I think we want to internalize it. I think we want to stop having those self-sabotaging behaviors and recognize that it was us. Like, I need to recognize on the days I've had my biggest losses, it's not necessarily that my strategy failed in those days where I have a really big struggle day. More so, it's that I didn't follow my process. Maybe I didn't wait for my ideal setup, or when it happened and it just was a day that didn't work, I didn't respect my stop loss and then be able to walk away. So oftentimes on my biggest days, I want to make sure I am respecting the fact that it's not that my strategy necessarily didn't work or didn't provide me with lessons, but it's that my psychology was the issue, because I would have probably engaged in some revenge or overtrading behavior after the first insult or whatever. You're adding injury to insult, right? I can definitely think of a time. So this last year, just thinking about this episode, like what do I want to be consistent with and no longer do? So for me, one of those mornings would be like, I get up, I plan my hypothesis, I have pretty good read of the market, a pretty good idea of what a great setup would be. But then I slipped. I engaged in a poor trading behavior outside of my best setup. And instead of waiting for my ideal opportunity, I would have jumped the gun or said, I think this trade is setting up, but right now I feel like we're doing this. And so I'm just going to get in real quick and just grab a bite of this too. Well, in that situation, there's impulsivity. There is some angst, there's some greed, there's some recognizing that I could maybe have multiple good trades and I can just sneak in this little one and then still capitalize on this big one. So my first action is a divergence from my intention. And what if that one is stopped out? Then I'm red. And I didn't even get to wait for my best opportunity, right? Ugh. And then I might set up and then I might get in, but then I came in at red. And so then I add an extra contract potentially because I want to have the P&L that I should based on my trade setup, but it's because I'm trying to make up for this early stupid loss that I felt like I didn't need to engage in. You see how it's already going down the rabbit hole of a mess, right? And there are situations where this has happened. If I over leverage, then I have to maybe put my stop a little tighter. Potentially then my stop is taken because it was too tight, but the trade still worked. So then I was over leveraged with an inappropriate stop loss. And then I'm double red. Ugh. So this has happened where I have hit my max loss and I have really caused myself so much frustration based on allowing those bad habits in. It's so frustrating. And that is not a consistency situation that I want to feed into. I don't want that to be an okay, normal day that I behave as. I want to recognize and call myself out essentially with like eyes wide open that I did things that I would like to not do. I know that those impulsive early behaviors, put me in a more vulnerable position. Sometimes they work, and that's why I have done it, right? Like sometimes oftentimes, to be honest with you, I will see the early move right, and I will want to wait for the better move that is setting up, and I'll grab a bite of that early move, and it will work because the read was right. And so I do grab a bite, and then I grab the other trade, and it goes all kinds of ways, to be honest. But if it's not how I intend to trade, then that's not how I should be trading, right? That's not a consistency. It's not a business approach of taking it seriously and doing what I always intend to do in those moments. And so I also want to be gentle on myself, right? Consistency isn't necessarily a personality trait, but I would argue more so that it's a skill that's built under emotional pressure. So I don't think any of us are born consistent, right? Thinking of my children, they're crazy town. They do all kinds of things. They play and they eat and they snack and they want sugar and they devalue vegetables and they want to stay up and they don't want to get up in the morning. Especially coming out of winter break, right? It's going to be real special. Getting them up the first week back because they don't prefer consistency. That's something that we grow into. That's a skill that we build over time. And honestly, you build it faster with a little bit more pressure. You have to put yourself in situations where you do want to cheat or do something else, and you decide to not, and you decide to be consistent because you prioritize the outcomes that gets you. And we see that in adulting in all sorts of patterns that we engage in. But trading is definitely one that is hard, I think. And so looking at it with I'm not mad at myself that I'm not perfect, because why? Why would I want to make myself feel bad, bring negative energy into who I'm trying to be? Instead, I'd rather just respect the fact that I'm human and I'm still dialing this part of me in. I want to frame this whole concept as a psychology thing that I'm growing, not necessarily a personal weakness, especially if I know that I'm targeting it for improvement. If it's something that I just succumb to all the time and I don't care and I just say I don't, whatever it is, what it is, this is what happens sometimes. I don't do that with things that I know are bringing me negative outcomes. I would rather own it and be this is something that's still a struggle in me that I need to change because it's not getting me to where I want to go. So I want to think about it and I want to approach it and deal with it in my journaling and in my action plans and in my morning hypothesis, how I speak to myself in my quiet moments. And so reinforcing that in my head of, when my rewards are inconsistent, maybe I did get a nice P&L out of it, but I want to recognize that wasn't a good plan. That's not always going to be a setup for success. I think our brains, right? We chase dopamine. You guys have heard dopamine, right? We chase the highs. If you're chasing the highs, if you're chasing the trades, if you're chasing the P&L, that will lead to, a little bit more sketch behaviors. But instead, I've found that if I can switch that in my mind and I chase the best execution, the best set up, my highest probability confirmation, still early in the trade, but with some data that supports it, and I chase to execute to the best of my ability, that's different. It's not so much I'm chasing to lock in a green trade so I can get my max daily win and then move about my day. That could get me into trouble. That has got me into trouble. But when I'm I want to wait. I want to wait for my setup. I know what I'm looking for when I see it. And then I want to chase the best execution in those moments that I can. You guys, that creates such a different outcome for me. And so I think that really, I want to remember that all the time, every single day. I put that in my morning hypothesis that's how I want to behave, because if I don't, it's so easy to succumb to other habits, such as oversizing after a win, getting confident, or forcing trades after a loss, and revenge trading or over trading to fix it. Ooh, fix it mode. That's a tricky one for me. And so for me, I have to figure out how to sort of make it process and business focused instead of the emotional part of it. I want to try and downplay the emotional part of it and upplay the business and strategy part of it. And that in that way, I can make sure my self-worth is not tied to the outcome and the P&L necessarily, but more so who I'm becoming. I want my identity to be strong in terms of my choices, my executions, and not so much as any sort of a negative thing. I don't want it to be tied to my P&L. I don't want it to be tied to being right. I was right, and so I should feel good about myself and I'm worthy to be a trader. That doesn't help. It creates kind of an emotional urgency to do something instead of follow my process, to put a trade on because I want to win instead of waiting with patience for my best setup. It can punish us, right? For giving into that intensity, the urge, really pushing at a thing, really having a contract on at all times because you're trading. This is your trading time. And so you need to have some leverage out there that's making you money, and an intensity like that, it can be good for you and your outcomes in different ways, right? In different careers, in certain careers where you just really try really hard to get project done and it turns out great. Or like in fitness, when you really push it, you push yourself, you level up your weights, you push your time, more reps. But in trading, I think there becomes a level of, you don't want to like back off in terms of not focusing and studying and having the charts in front of you often, but the number of trades is not necessarily going to get you to the outcome that you want. Instead, there becomes a point where you need to dial in your precision and your execution, and your only planned, intended, understood trades is what you execute on, instead of just shooting shots all over in every direction, hoping something sticks. That is not it. And so like that needs to be trimmed out, cleaned up, and reorganized in your mind in terms of action on your mouse will not get you the P&L that maybe someone who doesn't understand this world might think that it might. Early when I was a trader, people would ask me, so you just get to trade all day when your kids are at school? And it's like that would cost me so much money. That would cost me so much money because I would F around and find out, right? I would throw contracts at things a lot. And I have had those days, I think, early in my career when my kids were all at school. I had time. The day was open and available and no one was, talking at me. And so I would keep my charts up and I would think I would see something and I would be throwing, contracts around. And sometimes that would be great and feed into that negative vibe. And sometimes it would really be a problem for my P&L and some reset fees. So I stopped doing that. But that sort of like intensity is actually really not generally helpful for your P&L, especially in the retail trading scene where we have this much availability and some isolation. There's no one around you. You can get into trouble with that. And I think that a consistency vibe is better than that intensity in that world, right? And I think part of that spins off that, right, is to be that consistent is it's really easier when you can have emotional neutrality. We've talked a little bit about neutrality. There's this book, It Takes What It Takes. Yeah, it takes what it takes. And it's really good about talking about the importance of being neutral with how you approach everything. Because it does feel unnatural and it feels kind of weird, right? Like you're trading to win. You want to be happy about it, especially when the money is printing, right? We should be proud of like these big sick days that we can earn when you start getting really good at trading. And you should. But I think you want to neutralize that out just a little bit so that you're not riding these really high highs. And then when you have a little dip, you're like, nope, I'm not doing that. That can trigger your psychology in terms of wanting to fix it to get back to the high highs. And so having these big swings in your equity curve and your experience can make you chase the highs that much harder because you really want to just keep with that vibe. So I love the idea of how emotional neutrality can really help our consistency. I think aiming to have a business of your trading is better because the market doesn't reward how badly you want it. It rewards how consistent you can follow a set plan that you understand and has a positive expectancy. So it's not really about urge and aggression and desire. It's more so about strategy and studying and patience. So I think we got to shift from outcome focused to process loyalty. Process loyalty, right? I love that term because it's like where you focus instead on just being a boss trader and having sick P&L and getting better and better month over month. More so, you switch to being really good at following your process, dialing in your process, making your process as strong as you can, and then being loyal to it every day. And that can be, you don't envision success as, did I make money? Am I green? But instead, did I follow my rules? Did I protect my capital? Did I follow my risk management and execute cleanly per my intentions? Am I really being loyal to my process? And so I think that there is a lot of power in that reframe. So if you're journaling this year, which I recommend that everyone journals because I think you learn so much from your own data when you look back at it. But as part of your journaling, I would definitely say to track your progress in terms of other information as well. So with your stats, of course, you're probably going to have your P&L and your, number of winning trades, losing trades, how you held your contracts, where you were taken out at. But also, how about, did you follow your rules? What percentage would you say you did? And you can grade that based on entry, exit, trade management. What percentage did you follow your rules? Was your max risk respected? Intra-trade and intraday, points for that. What about your emotional state? Before your trading, at your entry, during trade management, how was your emotions through that? And, how would you grade yourself on that? Was there room for improvement? And if so, at what point in your trading day was this the clinch point where you really identified you could do some work on that? And that data is going to be really valuable for you. I think that strong risk management can also help you regulate through this period as well, because risk management is not supposed to be a bad thing. It shouldn't be seen as stopped out, like, oh, it sucked, this trade was bad. No, it protects you. Like, it's protective stop, not a stop loss. You're protecting your capital, you're protecting your accounts, your ability to trade and grow. And it also protects your psychology. If you think about it, keeping your loss contained, not wide open to the wind, like either I'm going to make it or I'm going to blow my accounts. No, but rather like this trade will work based on this setup at this point, or it won't. And if it doesn't, I shouldn't be in the trade because then my trade is off because the level didn't hold. So thinking about it that way really helps ground you in the fact that, like, if I'm stopped out, I need to be stopped out because the trade is not working. So that means I'm not really sure on what's going on. And so then I don't need to have an open-ended contract, essentially, if my trade plan is not playing out. And so in that way, realizing your stop loss system is a psychological safety system as well, like that is really supportive of making sure you always want to honor that. If you get into a trade and you're really stressed out and you want to like monkey around with it, I think that there could be a concern there that maybe you're oversized, because that can cause some emotional hijacking when you're in heavier than your account really can tolerate, or your stress level can tolerate, or your understanding of the market movement can tolerate. If you're a really new trader, or if you're a trader who's dabbling in something different, or you're testing a different system, or you just know what size account you have and what it needs to have in it in order to support its growth, you need to make sure that you're sizing appropriately, because if you're oversized, you can slide right into that fight or flight system, and our bodies will go on full alert, and it heightens your emotional responses, it heightens your energy, your heart rate, you just get sweaty palms. And that generally will mean that your leverage is too high. And the numbers that are being thrown around are stressing you out, and you're not sure what to do with this. You're really like almost praying that it goes in your direction. I would argue in that situation, you're probably too big on size. And so consider cutting that, or how you need to modify it. If it's just one or two mini contracts and you're really quite stressed out, like consider 5 or 10 micros as your size instead. And then you can scale still because you're in micros. Potential loss will not be quite as stressful. And then you can manage your risk and your consistency better because you don't flip right into that heightened emotional state as fast. Your cortisol gets to stay lower. Your stress response gets to stay lower. You get to have improved patience because you're not like freaking out a little bit about what's going to happen if it doesn't go in your direction. When you have your emotions are more neutral, you can be more in that observer mode where you're watching to see what's going to happen, making sure the data is supporting your plan, making sure it's supporting your trade management, or when you might need to cut and bounce from the trade. And so I think that being lower leverage, appropriate leverage, like for me, when I am appropriately leveraged and it's going against me, it's like, well, we'll see what happens. Like 1 or 2 stop outs, it's not going to be great, but it's still going to be like contained to a reasonable size. Tomorrow's another day. That'll be it for my morning. But if I have a big cushion on my trade and it goes against me, that's when I get into like, oh shit mode of like, what if this actually is stopped out? What if I was giving a lot of cushion because it just might need time? Whatever I told myself in the moment when I took all that risk on, and then it starts to push against me. And then it's like, frick, like I didn't want to have this much of a loss today. Well, if you don't want to have that much of a loss, Becky, like what the hell are you doing in that trade, mama? And so I definitely have had these like come to Jesus moments with myself of like, I wasn't in like a clean, curious, patient observer mode and managing it appropriately. I was in too heavy, or I allowed too deep of a stop loss. And that's not actually what my trade system wants. And so that is a signal that if you're getting those moments, look at that, look at your size, look at your risk management, because that can really challenge your consistency in terms of following your rules, because it's going to put you in that emotional state quick if the trade goes against you, especially. And so I think you want to make sure that when you are dialing in your trade system and thinking about your consistency for this year, as I am doing, what I am doing is making sure I want to know what my daily risk loss is, my maximum daily stop loss is, as well as my intra-trade maximum risk that I want to put on, and then recognizing when I'm getting in, what that looks like, if I can take the risk of a certain trade or if I need to wait for a different setup. And so identifying what my risk needs to be in those different variations, and then how I'm going to honor them. Also, a daily loss limit is non-negotiable for me because that has saved my butt so many times. And basically, if you can reframe that, you can consider it like that's your permission to stop. That is you saying, when I'm not in a trade, I have decided that this is the amount that I am maximum willing to lose in my accounts per day. And then I just have to walk away. I just have to say, I didn't nail it. 1 or 2 trades, I hit this number. I'm out. Tomorrow will be better. Let me go work out. Let me go do this other thing. Let me focus elsewhere in my life and let the emotions settle of having 1 or 2 losses and hitting that number. But let it settle knowing you're safe, right? There's so much more peace in that because you're consistent in terms of you won't let your accounts go more than X number red in that day. And for me, when it hits, like I'm a little bit crabby in the moment. I'm a little salty because I don't want to be done trading and I want to end green. But then when that saltiness settles, then I'm grateful that my accounts are fine and tomorrow is going to be great and whatever, like my life is still abundant and I can do other things. And so having these little things in your mind and the way that we can think about them will help decrease the amount of spiral periods that we get caught up in, you know? I think if your risk makes you emotional, it's just too big. And I have, I do better when I respect that as well. And just because you're a trader for a few years doesn't mean it's any sort of like side eye if you're still trading micros, because you can scale. Like you can get in with a little pile of micros and then scale them out and manage your risk differently. And that doesn't mean that you're not like an arrived trader or what have you. It just means that you're respecting your risk and your account size and how you want to grow it and let it compound. And potentially you're using trade copier. And so you don't need to have like these outsized days in order to have a good payout every, chunk of time. So I think that there's a lot of ways that we can think about it to know that you don't have to shoot for the moon with high leverage. In fact, that's much riskier and not at all consistent. And I would argue that extracting regular money from the market will be much more of a comfortable situation if you can find a consistency with your system. That's the whole point of our conversation today. And speaking of the consistency conversation today, if you're still here with me, please do take a quick moment, like and subscribe, leave me a comment, because I really, really enjoy getting to know other traders, because I've been a trader 4.5 years and I love trading. I love trading and I love learning about it and talking about the psychology of it and the ways that I'm growing, because maybe someone else out there will find value in hearing how I'm growing, what I have done, how I'm thinking about it, how I'm focusing on my process to start this year and recognizing that my consistency is a high priority. And so maybe it is for you too. Maybe you want to be in this conversation with me, even though it maybe feels a little one-sided since I'm the only one talking. But so leave me a comment. And then it's not one-sided and we can be friends. Okay. Anyways, these ideas should feel doable, but not overwhelming. And that's what I want you to think about it too, of it's just a part of our process, right? It's a part of, we set up our trades, we set up our charts, we understand our risks, we do our back testing, and then making sure we're focusing on our consistency and our rules is also just a part of what we do. It's doable. It's business. I think if you feel overwhelmed with saying I need to fix 25 things because I'm really just not where I want to be as a trader, that can feel overwhelming. So if you're in that moment, I would encourage you to break it down. Instead of saying I have all these areas I need to fix, pick 1 or 2 that are your highest risk points, and then make some plans around those that are non-negotiable. So maybe if you get into a trade and it doesn't start working, you always leverage up. You always will add a contract, dollar cost average, or what have you. If that is your biggest issue, you have got to make a rule around that to knock it off, because you will recognize in your information and your experience from the last however many years, months, that gets you into so much trouble. You gotta stop it. You gotta recognize that to be consistent, this behavior messes me up more than it saves me. It's not worth it. Create a rule, make it non-negotiable, tell your people, write it down, own that, and have that be the one thing to start, because getting 1% better day over day, week over week will get you to the outcome. And finding your behaviors that are the worst for you, that impact your outcomes the strongest, target those first. Break it down. The other ones you'll get to when you get to them. We are only human. We can't choose everything all at once, because that's not even realistic. And I think by breaking it down, we can choose to master little pieces that help you the most, instead of trying to tackle everything and being just, all over the place. That's just a recipe to stay confused and jumbled up and not focused. But really adhering to changes that will make the biggest impact to your outcomes in bite-sized priorities, essentially, that will help you kind of piece it together and who you want to become. And like I said, it's normal, I think, for it to take a longer chunk of time to really dial in your trading. And so like, don't make that any kind of weird thing either, that you're not there yet. And so it's some affront to you, but instead just, let your process, your journey be yours, and, use your data on where you need to prioritize coming into your next phase as a trader and lock it in there. And I think for me, like, embracing the fact that trading should be boring and normalize the boredom as success, that's good. That's great. I think that is a positive view of everything that I'm trying to do. Like I want my trades to be kind of bread and butter. And these are the couple setups that I really like. And if I don't see them, maybe that's not the day for me to trade. But when I do see them, I want to like get quick at spotting them as soon as I can so that I can capitalize on them. And that is the energy that I feel really good about as a trader. And I think at the end of the day, look back on your day, think about what you did as your journal. Were you rushing or were you calm? Did you trade to feel some kind of way, to achieve a rush or a high, or to make back your points, or to feel good about trading because something else in your life is kind of a mess? Like if that is your situation, kind of try and call that out when you're reviewing where you're at, and kind of have a reset and a recap of what am I doing to be my most emotionally neutral, consistent trader, to avoid that boom and bust cycle that is so easy in trading. It's so easy because, the booms are the big wins and the busts are the big blowups. And that is those two, well, maybe not the big wins are super easy, but the big blowouts are super easy in the beginning, the big bust periods. And those don't build your accounts, right? Those take you back every time. Those taking me back every time. So I definitely like to prioritize, my execution, having that be a big win when I follow my rule. If I'm emotionally disciplined, in what ways was I proud of myself for being emotionally disciplined? Maybe just giving myself little pointers, little props in my journaling of, I took that stop loss and I did call it. I locked my accounts. I walked away. I shut it down. I went and did my workout instead of fought with the market all day. Like that was a win. That was a red P&L day. That was a big win because I was emotionally disciplined. And that's an important part of my trading business. Maybe you could also think about if you're doing personal habits outside of trading that are helping you be more grounded and more patient at trading. Maybe you're doing something different in your home or your exercise routine, or some sort of a disciplinary choice, going to bed at a certain time, Monday through Friday. How can you give yourself kudos for having that consistency? Because consistency in a bigger part of your life will cross over into trading if we can make that a priority all the time. Not think about it as on the days where you don't have it that you messed up, but instead like what behavior snuck in when I was in that high pressure situation that I want to identify and maybe think about if I need to make a rule around it, make a different approach to it, I think if we think about consistency as a really positive thing and as an identity choice, I think it's more powerful because I think saying I am a disciplined, consistent, patient trader who sees my best setups and capitalize on them, and I don't F around with impulsivity or like mediocre trades, feels good, right? It feels good to be able to say that and to have that be the goal and how you want to show up every day. And so like thinking about that as your goals for the next year, not monetary so much, but instead my identity is going to be this person who I see myself as that gets the results that I want. And so you don't necessarily need like a ton of crazy discipline, but more so like less decisions. You lock into your system. I'm only interested in this. I believe in myself and I'm going to trust myself to execute per my system and to follow my risk because I've studied it outside of trading hours. I've identified it. I know how I want to be, what trades I want to look for. I know how I want to protect my downside. That way my accounts can survive day over day, week over week. And then just let the days happen. Like don't force them, don't chase them, don't hunt them, but instead like wait for your best setups and then be like, okay, it's go time, lock it in. And then let that day be done and wait for the next one. It doesn't have to be super intense. I think the traders who last aren't necessarily the bravest, but they're the most consistent. Boring traders are paid traders, I think oftentimes, not the ones that went in for 10 contracts because they saw the volatility and they just knew it was going up and they had this big outsized day. Like we can see those on social media, right? All over the place. I tend to mute them, but you can see that and great on them. But what about the time when they threw 10 contracts and they just knew it was going to go up and that bid just tanked and their accounts went, they didn't share that. Or maybe they didn't share it with you. But I guarantee you, someone who does really brave, courageous, outlandish, crazy, beautiful, sick, giant trades, I would worry about them on a day where they weren't seeing the market clearly. And for me, I would rather dial it back, take the leverage that is appropriate for my account size, trade my system to the best of my ability when I see my best setups, and then reap the benefits of that week over week, because I will get home runs in there. I know what it feels like to really dial in a trade, feel good, be fresh, get a great entry. Then I can scale out one at the nearer target that I feel good about. And then I can trail for a while if it's a really good setup. Like, you can have home run days while being a really consistent, patient trader. And you can have a whole lot of base hits in the middle that are reasonable wins or small to reasonable losses. And let me tell you, like, the math on that is real good. So cheers to that. Aiming for that consistency as we dig into our system this year, and we are, entering towards the second half of the first month of the year. We're early in January 2026. That's the whole point of this episode. This is where I want to keep my focus drilled in at this year of staying my most consistent trade plan oriented business trader self, because I really like the paychecks that brings. And I want that for all of us. And if you see it differently, let me know, because I'm still growing and I really enjoy getting feedback from other traders and having conversations around all of this. So please do leave a comment. I hope you guys are having a killer start of your year and have to work on managing your overconfidence because you're on such a roll, because I love that for us. I love that being the project for me of staying not overconfident and staying humble and focused on my system, because I've just had so many great days in a row that I know I need to make sure I'm being calm about it. And so I wish that we are all there and having a great start to the year. Happy trading, everyone. Bye.